I used to work the shift lead at a Taco Bell, usually working the front counter or drive-thru alongside my crew. I was 24, married with 2 small kids. I lived only a few streets away and often walked to work to save on gas. Not long after I started, a man, a little older than me, began dropping in. Always cheerful, almost too cheerful. I soon noticed he only showed up during my shifts. Eventually, he was there every single time I worked. I told my husband. As far as we could tell, this guy never came near our house, but at work, he was like a shadow. One morning, I walked in and saw him in uniform, being trained by an assistant manager. He immediately asked to be scheduled on my shifts. I panicked, went straight to the office, and told the store manager. She knew a regular had been hanging around, but hadn't realized it was the same guy. Horrified, she promised to keep him away from me and arranged an immediate transfer. He'd finish the day here, then report to a nearby location as his home store. She sent me home with pay and called in another night shift manager to cover. When I came back the next day, she told me he'd backed out of the transfer and quit on the spot. He wandered in a few more times afterwards, so I stationed my husband in the dining area as a silent deterrent. After that, the man disappeared for good. Or so I thought. About 6 months later, a friend texted me a news link. There was his mugshot, same face, same forced smile. He'd been arrested outside another Taco Bell with rope, duct tape, and a small bottle of what police believed was chloroform stuffed in his backpack. The article said he'd been lurking near the closed crew's cars when security spotted him. My stomach dropped. I just realized how lucky I'd been and why he wanted to be on my shift so badly. About a week ago, I saw this random TikTok that said something like, "Always trust your gut. Lock your doors. Look around every time you leave your house." At that time, I barely paid any attention to it. Just one of those forgetful scroll moments. But for some reason, that message stuck in the back of my mind. A few days later, I was heading out to meet some friends. I was home alone. Like always, I locked the front door. Nothing out of the ordinary. And right then, that video popped back into my head. Something inside me whispered, "Look around." The front yard looked normal. Quiet street, no movement, but the feeling didn't go away. It got stronger. So I walked around to the back, and that's when I saw it. A car parked about 30 to 50 meters down, angled perfectly towards my house. Inside were 2 men, not talking, not on their phones, just staring directly at my home. My stomach sank. I pulled out my phone to snap a picture, but the second I raised it, the engine roared and they sped off. It wasn't an accident. They weren't lost. They were waiting for someone. They were watching, and they didn't want to be caught. Here's the part that really messes with me. 6 days before that, I had a car accident. It wasn't life-threatening, but it was serious. I flipped my car. And for the days leading up to it, I had this weird anxiety in my chest. That same gut feeling, a quiet voice saying, "Drive carefully, slow down." I didn't listen and I crashed, but this time I listened. I paid attention, and maybe that's the only reason I'm still here. Now, every time I leave the house or walk home at night, I feel it again, that pressure in the air, that creeping sense that someone's watching, waiting for me to slip up. I went out with this guy for a year before it clicked that he was a full-blown sociopath. While we were together, he dropped gems like, "If you ever cheated on me and I sent your clothing for DNA testing, they'd come back clean, right?" sliding on a pair of brass knuckles as he spoke this. If you cheated, you'd never want to find out what I'd do. We worked at the same company and even rented a house with a few co-workers. Huge mistake. While I was asleep, he'd unlock my phone and go through every text. He would also spy on me if I'm out with friends or at theater practice. I'd find this out by him yelling at me if my stories did not align with what he thought. One winter day, I was driving up somewhere when he yanked my phone out of my car and bolted. Keep in mind, I was driving while this happened. He ended up slipping on black ice and fractured his elbow. He later told everyone at work he accidentally slipped on ice and even went to the ER for sympathy. While our company opened a second store, I transferred. I thought it would be best if we added a little space into our relationship. He started cruising to that side of town, circling my new location and leaving notes on my windshield, constantly showing up unannounced just to make sure I'm not lying. That's what really pushed me to the end. One Friday night, knowing he was on shift, I went back to the house to grab my clothes and belongings. I had to escape. 10 minutes later, he was pounding, screaming, and grabbing me as soon as I got near the door. He didn't let me leave. I kept trying my best to leave. He then tailed me on down the on-ramp, riding my bumper like he wanted to ram me. I filed for a restraining order, which was immediately denied. Eventually, I packed up and moved out of state without letting him know or anyone close to us know. I sacrificed my job, money, well-being, practically everything just to escape this monster. I completely changed my whole identity to escape this mess, but that feeling of being stalked never left me. My wife's nightmare started with a harmless favor. She teaches at a local school, and one afternoon she was tossing out a pile of battered old books. The custodian, polite enough at first, asked if he can keep them for his kids. She said sure. After that, he was everywhere. I guess he used this as an invitation that she was interested in him. Sweeping outside her classroom, wiping the same windows over and over again, always finding some excuse to linger near her. Then, winter hit. One evening after work, my wife got a flat tire just off campus. Daylight was fading, the air was freezing, and there he was again, helpfully changing the tire. While he knelt by the wheel, he started making crude, inappropriate comments, even asking if she's been with an older man. She stayed silent, rattled to the core. The obsession escalated, and the administration brushed it off. My routine began driving her to school at dawn and picking her up after class because she was genuinely scared to step outside alone. It finally boiled over into the cafeteria. He muttered something lewd while she ate, and she snapped, bursting into tears and screaming for him to leave her alone. Instead of backing her, the school put her on a few days of paid leave. The principal even suggested that maybe she misread friendliness as something more. It seemed like the principal and whole staff favored the custodian and didn't even want to take into consideration that my wife is telling the truth. That was it. I met with 2 school board members I barely knew and told them I had an attorney on standby and would sue the district unless my wife felt safe at work. The custodian was then finally transferred to a different campus, but it took months before she was able to relax. After months of trying to move on from the worst news that came up, apparently the custodian had been arrested at his new location. It turns out he had followed a new teacher home and tried to break into her home while she slept. A thorough investigation was done on him, and it turns out he had a USB drive with dozens of pictures of teachers. If things couldn't get any worse, he would post these pictures on online forums with high-level details of each teacher, the location they worked, the hours, and even some home addresses. My wife can finally feel at peace with this creep being locked up.